Hi everyone, I am finally back. I've had a crazy last couple of weeks. I'm currently in Utah, and a few weeks ago, my mom actually flew down with two of her friends to visit me, and we went on a little road trip together around Utah, and then I went to my first nomad gathering, which I didn't even know was a thing, but it was really cool. There's like almost 200 other nomaders, and we got to park on someone's property kind of outside of Moab. And for a few days, like, we all just hung out and did yoga. We had potluck dinners. There was like DJ, live music every night. It was amazing, and I got to meet so many cool people. I just started making this channel to help other people who are interested in doing van life or just wanted to live vicariously through me, through the comforts of their own home. So I still work a lot too, and then trying to put out videos on top of navigating this new lifestyle is proving more challenging than I thought, but I am doing my absolute best to get them up as quickly as possible. I am right now currently in southeastern Utah at probably one of the most beautiful camp spots I've ever been to. It's called Valley of the Gods. It is south of Moab and just north of Monument Valley. It is free BLM land, and it is absolutely breathtaking. I love it here. I never want to leave. But anyways, today we're going to talk about everything that has gone wrong mechanically with my van, and maybe why or why not you should pick a ProMaster versus the other kinds of vans that are out on the market. So, last video we talked about the total cost of my build and the van itself. So the van itself was about, with taxes, like $37,000. The build itself was $26,000. You do the math, that's a lot of money. Now on top of that, I've had several things go wrong with my van. Obviously, before you even think about the build of your van, you have to buy a van. There are three popular models on the market for building and converting your own van, and that is a Mercedes Sprinter, a Ford Transit, or this one that I'm in, the Ram ProMaster. Now, I chose Ram ProMaster for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the cheapest out of all the vans. Not by a lot. It's still expensive, $37,000 for a used ProMaster, but it is still a little bit cheaper than the Sprinter or the Ford Transit. Second of all is its width. So this van is slightly wider than the Sprinter and the Transit. It's actually like 6'3", I think, wall to wall. It's also a little bit shorter. I'm a short person. I don't need a super tall ceiling, but I do like a wide body because then I can sleep fully across, just like you see my bed here, and I never touch the walls. It's super comfortable. The third reason I bought it is because the ProMaster is a slightly boxier shape. It has more right angles than the Transit or the Sprinter, and that makes obviously building it a little bit easier. It makes it easier to hang your upper cabinets and all the things. Right angles is what we want when we're building, right? So there were less rounded corners. The walls were slightly straighter. All of that for my first time build sounded super appealing to me. So that is why I chose to buy the Ram ProMaster. I don't want to say I regret it, because ultimately I am still living the lifestyle that I absolutely dreamed of. I know I've talked a lot about how much I love my build, and that is true. I love what I have personally done to this van, but there have been so many other things that have gone wrong with it that have been a huge challenge for me. So let's start with the basics. So I bought this ProMaster. It's a 2019 2500 Ram ProMaster. I bought it with 60,000 miles on it from a dealer down in Oregon. And before I bought it, I had it independently inspected by a mechanic. Everything checked out. There are a few minor things, like the slider door is a little sticky. I don't know, small things like that. Nothing of a huge concern. So I went ahead and got the van. I had it for a couple months. I started building it. This was like, I think March, February in Washington. So weather's miserable. All I did was literally built up my bed frame and then shot down to Utah and lived out of it for, I think it was like 2 months. I think it was April and May. in Utah with just a bed frame, and then all my stuff was just in like Tupperware boxes on the floor. But I just had to get out of that weather. So then May, when the weather started getting super hot in Utah, I drove back up to Washington and continued to build out the van. Now about a month after I got back, in June, the transmission failed. Now, the transmission failed because of a recall, but I didn't even get the recall notice until 2 days after it had failed. So, had the van towed to a local dealership where it sat for 6 months while they worked on getting the transmission fixed. Honestly, the entire thing was such a horrible experience. The people at the dealership were rude. They continuously gave me reasons of why they couldn't fix it. One time they just said they didn't have any mechanics. So for the first 5 weeks, my van sat untouched because they said they needed a specific mechanic to work on it, and they weren't available for 6 weeks. So my van sat literally untouched with no one working on it for that long. And then once they actually started working on it, they said, oh yeah, your part will be here next week. Oh, it will be here next week. And that was pushed back for almost 3 months. So it was just a really, like I said, one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Especially for me, like, I had moved back in with my mom to save money while I was building the van. And so it just felt like I was really stuck in limbo. I had, was living with my parents again, but I wasn't actually actively like working on anything. I had no idea when my van was going to be back. So it was a really kind of dark time for me. Honestly, it felt like I was very stuck. And like I had only had this van for like 3 months. That's it. 3 months. And I went on like a tiny trip, which I loved. And then my van was just sitting. And the most frustrating part was like, I just wanted to build it, but I couldn't because it was just in a lot at a dealership and I couldn't touch it. But anyway, it was finally finished in November of 2023. So again, I went in the shop in June, got it back November 2023, almost 6 months. It had sat for so long that they also had to replace the battery. And then as I was driving it home, the first time I'd gotten in my van for 6 months, it literally died on the side of the road. Like, I was only 15 minutes from the dealership, and I didn't even make it home because the van just flat out died. So I had to get a tow truck, tow it back to the dealership where it had just come from after sitting for 6 months, and they told me that the alternator failed. So they had to replace that. Now, the only good news is that this transmission, the battery, and the alternator were all fully covered because it was pretty much a direct result of the recall. The transmission went out because of the recall. The battery went out because the dealership let it sit for too long, and then they think the alternator went out because of that too. However, throughout this whole experience, like I said, their customer service was horrible from the dealership and Ram customer care. Ram customer care would not reimburse me for a dime, not even for the tow truck to get towed back to the shop after the alternator failed because of something the dealership did. So like I said, literally one of the worst customer experiences I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. I still get a little upset thinking about it, but it's done. It's in the past. At least I did not have to pay for new transmission, battery, and alternator. It just put my back about 6 months on the build. But I finally got it back, and I worked for the next 9 months to finish my build. Finally finished the interior around, I think it was July or August of 2024. And once the interior was done, I took it to my mechanic to get a lift kit put on it. While he was putting on the lift kit, he noticed that the struts were bad, and so we had to get those replaced, and that was $600 to replace the struts. After that, this is now, I think August of 2024, I took on my first trip once the build was complete. We just went on a short trip to the eastern side of Washington State for like a month. It was amazing. It was beautiful. But while I was out there, I noticed that when I was driving, especially getting up to like some higher speeds, like 60 miles an hour, the van started to shake, which was really concerning to me. So immediately drove it back into town, was like white knuckling it the whole time because I didn't know what was going on with the car. I was really scared. Took it back to my mechanic, and it turns out that the front axle was broken. So this is only a month after I just had to replace my struts. Literally, my first trip out after the van's fully built and after getting the new transmission and everything, have to replace the axles. So replacing both the axles cost me $1,300. Again, on my very first trip out, which was a lot of fun. I thought, okay, whatever, like, that's done. Time to take my next trip. So this time I wanted to go a little bit further. I was going to go down to Oregon. And beforehand, I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. So I took it to my mechanic to get an oil change. And that's when he noticed that my brakes were bad. So we had to replace the brakes. And that was $600. Now, I know that is just a part of normal, like, maintenance. I wouldn't even call it necessarily a repair, but maintenance for the van. But I think it was just everything on top of, like, the struts and the axle and the brake. Just felt like every time that I tried to do something, like, something went wrong. So anyway, brakes repaired, $600, not nearly as bad as the axle. Went on my trip to Oregon. Now, when I'm in Oregon, this is November of 2024, so last November. While I was driving, I noticed that every time I turned my steering wheel, there's like a really loud crunching sound. And then a light came on that was telling me to service my airbag system. So, turn around from Oregon, drive back up to Washington, take it to my mechanic, and it turns out a spring in my steering wheel was broken, and that spring, like, literally makes the airbag, or the airbag function. It makes the horn work. It, I don't know, it does all the stuff, this tiny little spring. So we had to get that replaced, and that was $1,400. This is November. So again, this was axle or struts go out in July, axle breaks in August. Yeah, brakes are in August, September, and then the spring in my steering wheel breaks in November. So again, every time I've taken this van out for a trip, something goes wrong with it. And it's expensive. It's not like a couple $100. Like almost everything, well, everything is $600 plus. Most things are $1,000 plus. But at this point, I'm already in debt from buying the van, building it out, and now I'm just having to, like, shovel out money on repairs. At this point, I'm thinking, like, what else is there to replace? Like, I've already replaced so many things. Hopefully we're good to go. I stay home for the holidays, and then January I finally leave Washington State for good and head south for warmer weather. I'm taking the 101 all the way down. I'm in Monterey, California. This is March of this year, so just like a couple months ago, and I pull over to use the bathroom, and I get back in the van, and the van won't turn on. My starter had gone out. I was lucky enough to find an amazing mechanic down in Monterey who got me back on the road in 24 hours, fixed my starter for me, but it cost me $900. That is so far the latest that's happened. I've now gone from California down to Arizona up to Utah, and nothing else is broken. Oh my god, this isn't even wood. Knock on wood. I don't want to say that out loud because I keep saying, like, well, I've basically replaced everything. Like, what else is there to fix? And then something keeps happening. Like, every time I travel for even like a slightly significant amount of time, something breaks. So it's makes me, I mean, I know I'm kind of like smiling and laughing when I'm talking about this, but to be honest, it makes me really nervous to drive my vehicle because so many things have gone wrong with it. And it's uneasy being obviously like a single woman traveling. And if I break down, a lot of times I'm camping out in places like this, camping in places that are remote, that are not on a paved road, that are, you know, a little bit rougher. And if I get stuck out here alone, or have to pay for tow truck to come and get it, I mean, it's a really unsettling feeling, not trusting, or not only your vehicle, like your means of and ways of getting around, but your home, like what you live in. So it has not been the best experience with the van itself, is the conclusion of my story. I do have another car back in Washington. It's a Ford Escape. It's a 2006, and I've barely had to do anything on it other than like oil changes and temperature control, and it's almost 20 years old. Before that, I had a Toyota Corolla. Again, maybe changed the brakes, did my oil, and nothing went wrong with it. This has by far been the most expensive car to maintain. And just in short succession, something happening one after another. And it's not like I bought it with a ton of miles. I bought it with 60,000 miles and had it independently inspected, and all these things still went wrong. So while there may be some pros to buying a ProMaster if you're considering building a van. Unfortunately, just from my personal use, I would have to strongly advise against it. Like I said, I don't want to say I regret it because I'm still here. I'm still doing what I dreamed of doing. But maybe next time I would go with a different van. My Ford Transit or Sprinter is probably much more reliable than a ProMaster. Again, I don't know if everyone's had this experience. This is just mine. But that's all I have to go off of. I would not do a Ram ProMaster again. So if you add up everything, that's $600 for the struts, $1,300 for the axle, $600 for the brakes, $1,400 for the spring and the steering wheel, $900 for the starter. That gets you to a grand total of $4,800 just since, in less than a year. Less than a year for just, and that doesn't include the oil changes I've done on it. That's just in less than a year. So from last, I think it was like August of 2024 to now we're in, let's say March was the last time something broke down. So August of 2024 to March of 2025, almost $5,000, and just not maintenance, like full on repairs for the ProMaster. And again, good luck dealing with customer care if you ever have any issues, because they won't help you either. So, like I said, I cannot personally recommend getting a ProMaster if that's what you're looking into. I just wanted to share this video because I think it would have helped me if I came across something like this when I was in my search of what type of van to get. Overall, like I said, I don't regret it because I am still living the life of my dreams. For the most part, everything is amazing out here, except for not being able to rely fully on my vehicle. But I would not trade this lifestyle for the world. And if I am going to continue doing it down the road, that's just something to think about next time if I decide to get a second van in the future. Anyways, the sun is about to set, so I'm going to go for a little sunset trail run with Kaya. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer anything, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.